Hello friends, my name is Ryan. I'm going to tell you a story named The Fatal Bus Crash When a School Trip Turned into a Nightmare, which is a very amazing story full of twists. So, let's start. It was a bright morning when the students of Brookfield High boarded the school bus, their laughter filling the air as they waved goodbye to their parents. It was the annual school trip, a visit to the historical site of Ravenwood Castle. Among the group were Alex, the class clown, Maya, the quiet but observant one, Jake, the sports star, and Amy, the curious bookworm. Little did they know, this seemingly ordinary journey was about to take a dark turn. The bus driver, Mr. Hargrove, was a man of few words. With his cap pulled low and sunglasses masking his eyes, he seemed to be hiding something. As the bus rumbled onto the winding forest road, the atmosphere shifted. The dense trees on either side of the road created an eerie tunnel, and the sunlight barely pierced through the thick foliage. The chatter among the students began to dwindle, replaced by an uneasy silence. Maya, sitting by the window, noticed something odd. A black car had been trailing the bus since they left the city. Every time the bus turned, the car turned too, maintaining a steady distance. She nudged Amy, pointing out the car. "Do you think it's just a coincidence?" Maya whispered. Amy shrugged, but her eyes reflected the same unease. "Maybe, but it's weird." The bus continued down the road, the forest growing denser. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the air. The bus jolted, and the student screamed as it swerved off the road. Mr. Hargrove struggled to regain control, but the bus came to a screeching halt at the edge of a steep ravine. Everyone sat frozen, the weight of what could have happened sinking in. "Is everyone okay?" Mr. Hargrove asked, his voice shaking. The students murmured their responses, some on the verge of tears. He stepped out to inspect the damage, leaving the students inside. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Mr. Hargrove didn't return. Jake, ever the brave one, decided to go check. "Stay here. I'll go see what's taking him so long." He climbed down from the bus, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Moments turned into an eternity, but Jake didn't come back. Fear gripped the students. Alex, trying to lighten the mood, joked, maybe he found a secret treasure and decided to keep it for himself. But no one laughed. The tension was palpable. Amy glanced outside. The black car was parked on the road behind them, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Two figures emerged, dressed in black coats, their faces obscured. They began walking toward the bus. "Guys," Amy said, her voice trembling. "We're not alone." The students crowded by the windows, their faces pale. The strangers reached the bus door and knocked. No one moved. "Open the door," one of them called out, their voice deep and commanding. When no response came, they began pounding on the door, their patience waning. Maya's mind raced. "We can't stay here. What if they're dangerous? And go where?" Alex countered. "We're in the middle of nowhere." The pounding grew louder, more aggressive. Suddenly, the emergency exit at the back of the bus burst open. The student screamed as Mr. Hargrove stumbled inside, blood staining his shirt. "Run," he yelled, his voice filled with terror. "Run into the forest. Now!" Panic erupted. The students scrambled to grab their belongings, rushing out through the emergency exit. They darted into the forest, the shadows swallowing them whole. Behind them, the strangers forced their way into the bus, their furious shouts echoing through the trees. The group ran until their lungs burned and their legs threatened to give out. They finally stopped in a small clearing, gasping for air. "What is happening?" Amy cried, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Hargrove, clutching his side, leaned against a tree. "Those men, they're not what they seem. They're after something on the bus." "What could they possibly want from a school bus?" Jake demanded. Before Mr. Hargrove could answer, a distant howl pierced the air. It was an unnatural sound, sending chills down their spines. "We need to keep moving," Maya urged. Staying here isn't safe. Reluctantly, the group pressed on, guided only by the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. Every rustle, every crack of a twig made their hearts race. The forest seemed alive, its shadows stretching and shifting as if watching them. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. Desperation drove them inside. The air was thick with dust, and the wooden floorboards creaked under their weight. Maya found an old lantern and lit it, casting flickering light across the room. "We'll stay here until morning," Mr. Hargrove decided. "It's safer than wandering the forest at night." But safety was an illusion. As the group settled in, strange things began to happen. The lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Whispers filled the air, though no one was speaking. Amy swore she saw a figure standing outside the window, but when she looked again, it was gone. The tension reached its peak when the cabin door slammed shut on its own. Everyone jumped, their fear turning into outright terror. "This place is haunted," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not the cabin," Mr. Hargrove said, his face pale. "It's them." "Them?" Maya asked, her voice shaking. "The men who were after us. They're not human." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Before anyone could process what he meant, the whispers grew louder, transforming into guttural growls. The cabin shook as if an earthquake had struck. "We need to leave," Maya said, grabbing the lantern. "Now!" The group burst out of the cabin, running blindly into the forest. The growls followed them, growing closer with every step. They reached a riverbank, the water reflecting the pale moonlight. "We can't outrun them," Jake said, his voice filled with despair. "Then we fight," Mr. Hargrove said, picking up a large branch. The students followed suit, arming themselves with whatever they could find. The growls grew deafening as shadowy figures emerged from the trees. The group braced themselves, ready to fight for their lives. But just as the figures lunged, a blinding light engulfed the forest. The growls turned into agonized screams before fading into silence. When the light dimmed, the figures were gone. The group stood in stunned silence, their makeshift weapons still in hand. "What just happened?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. Mr. Hargrove looked at the sky, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes, the forest protects those who are innocent." The group made their way back to the road as the first rays of dawn broke through the trees. A rescue team found them hours later, their faces etched with disbelief as they recounted their harrowing ordeal. The black car was never found, and neither were the men who had pursued them. To this day, the students of Brookfield High remember that night as the most terrifying experience of their lives. The trip to Ravenwood Castle was cancelled indefinitely, and the forest road was permanently closed. So, my friends, the next time you board a bus for a school trip, remember this story. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spine-chilling tales. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.